Hi, Callan for 74XX back with another arcade PCB repair. Today I have a pole position board. This is the Namco version, not the Atari version that I've worked on before, so things will be a bit different. And today we get to use a very special tool I haven't had before, so let's get started. Alright, so this actually came from the same person who sent me the last pole position board, and he recently was able to find a cockpit machine, which is really exciting for him. But it's wired for this Namco version of pole position, which is different from the Atari version. Let's start by taking a look at the board. So here is pole position, the Namco version. It is quite different from the Atari version, although I think actually everything on it is exactly the same. So this board is the CPU side. We have our main CPU, the Z80 right here. We've got some RAM right here, some RAM right here, some ROM, and then those 8002, the Z8002 chips that control the roadways are here and here. And it's connected to the bottom board with this ribbon connector here. This one's a little dodgy, might replace it. On the other side is all of our graphics stuff. The first thing I immediately noticed was that this video board was shorted, and there was a Zener diode right here that I've taken out. It's right here. When I started working on this, I was just gonna do a short, so I have some clips. And check out when I do continuity between 5 volts and ground. Something on this board is shorted. The real culprit was this diode right here. If I do a continuity check on the diode, shorted. With the diode disconnected, if I do a continuity check between 5 volts and ground on a chip, not shorted. Let's get that out of here. According to the schematics, that was Z1, a 1Z6.2, which is a 6.2 volt Zener diode. Just like the Atari version, each side of the board has its own 5 volt supply, and there's no connector here. First things first, I'm gonna replace these connectors actually on both sides of the board. I found nice new ones here. They're right angle, 3-pin, very common Molex connectors. So let's get those installed before we do anything else. And I grabbed a 6.2 volt Zener diode from my little pack here for the one that was shorted on the video board. Okay, board's back together now. I didn't actually replace the power connector on this side, it was fine. I did just touch up the solder connections. The other one I replaced it though. For an adapter, I've got video coming off the bottom, and so far I'm only applying power on top. No controls, no sound yet. I often do this when I'm not really sure I can fix a board, just so I'm not wasting all my time making an adapter for something that won't work in the end. Okay, I think we are ready to turn the board on. Let's see what we get. Okay, well we do have a video signal, so that's good. So our timing is probably okay. No game running, obviously. I can see a few things kind of rhythmically changing there, so I imagine we're probably in our Watchdog reset. Let's look at the schematics and figure out if that's true. Over here on the schematics, we are on what they're calling the sound microprocessor. This actually runs the whole show. I'm not sure why they call it just the sound processor, but anyway. So our first protocol will be pin 26 down here of the Z80 to see if that is being reset by all the circuitry here. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So there's pin 26, and we can see indeed it's resetting every little while. So the Watchdog reset really means that the program is getting stuck somewhere and the external circuitry is resetting the board in an attempt to get it running again. When the CPU is running properly, it sends a signal to that same circuitry to say reset the counter, so that it doesn't do the reset. So let's check to see if we're getting any Watchdog resets from the CPU. So if we follow this back up here, there's a counter, and the clear of that counter goes to WDR, Watchdog reset. So we got to figure out where that is coming from and see if that is getting tripped at all. So let's check pin 1 on chip 1J to see if the Watchdog reset is being tripped. Okay, 1J is right here. We're looking at pin 1. We are getting Watchdog resets. And you can see they disappear every second when the board gets reset. If we back way out, you can see bunch of resets and then they get stopped. So there's really two paths we could go from here. One, we could say maybe the Watchdog counter isn't working very well and it's prematurely resetting, or the program is getting to a certain part, then it actually is getting stalled and doesn't work anymore. So let's eliminate the first option. Let's disable the Watchdog and see if the game starts up. Often in this Watchdog circuit, there would be some way to disable it. There doesn't seem to be one here. This button down here just performs a manual reset. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna temporarily connect this pin 1 right to ground so that it's always clear and it could never actually trip the output to trip the reset. So I'm going to turn the board off just so I don't short anything out, but I'm going to connect this little probe between ground and pin 1. Okay. Turn it back on. Now pin 15 was what was causing the reset, and it can't go high, so it won't cause the reset. So pin 26 is now not resetting, it's just high, so that's good. That would be like what you'd expect if the program was running properly. But nothing's changed on screen. And if I hit the manual reset, can I get it to do anything really? Nope, nothing at all. So our problem doesn't seem to be with the Watchdog, it actually seems to be the program is stopping. So my next idea would be to check the ROMs, see if they have all the program code they need. Let's take these off here. So these are our 2 program ROMs here, one marked PP29 and one marked PP210. You might think that means Pole Position 2, but it doesn't. So I'm in the Namco Pole Position MAME driver, taking a look here. I'm going to try and match the labels that I have on the ROMs to what would be in the Z80 memory/ROM data. It's these ones here, PP29 and PP210. I know that because they're close to the Z80. But here you can see the main CPU, which is Z80, has different labels here. So let me look down and see if we can find PP2, 9, and 10. All right, well, this looks like it here. Pole Position A1N, dumped from an original Namco PCB. Ours isn't quite the same up there. Sorry, it's upside down. 220-89614, but that's pretty close. I'm sure it's fine. This Pole Pos A1N is probably the one I want. If the ROMs are good, it's going to identify which ones they are anyway. So let's pop those 2 out. Let's do 9 first. So I'm using my T48 programmer. It is a 2764. Turn off the check ID and let's read it. Okay, I'm going to save this. I'm going to copy the file name. So if you have MAME on your computer, which I'm sure you do, you don't need to upload your ROM to any online service. You can simply use ROM ident like this and insert the file name. It's a .bin. And it will actually check the MAME database and give you any matching files that are found. So this found 3 matches, Pole Position A1, Pole Position A1N, and Pole Position A2. So interestingly, this ROM set must be the Atari ROM set with those exact labels. It's going to be the Atari version 1 on the Namco PCB. Very interesting. All right, let's put the other one on, PP210, and see if we can also identify that one. Okay, the second chip is actually a smaller 2732. We'll read that and save it. And I will copy this file name. All right, and we will do the same thing again. Yep, so this second one also matches PP210.5H version 1 on Namco PCB. So that means our program ROMs are fine, nothing wrong with the EEPROMs. Our next check would be to see if the CPU is getting all the things it needs, if it's accessing the RAM and the ROM and everything. So let's just start poking around. Back on the schematic, this is the Z80 again, and we have a PAL, and we have the ROMs down here that we just checked, 6H and 5H. Let's check those ROMs and see if they're being selected and everything. Okay, so they didn't mark it, but pin 20 is the chip enable, chip enable for each one. So let's check pin 20 on each one. So that's ROM 1 is being enabled all the time. And this is a 24-pin chip. Well, they actually made a bit of a mistake here because the 2732 is a smaller physical chip than 2764. So where it says pin 20 up here should actually be pin 18. You can see that there are some holes in the board, so maybe they were thinking about putting a bigger ROM in there. But let's check pin 18. All right, well, that second ROM is not being selected at all. Interesting. All right, so this has this main PAL, and this may have actually been the PAL that we replaced on the last board. So this PAL is down here. I'll check the inputs first because it looks like all pins 1 to 9 should have something going on. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So inputs are all good on this. 11, so that's an output. Sorry, that's ground. 12 is an output, 13 is what is going to this 2732, and it's not being selected. So that could be a dead output, or it could be that the program's just not getting that far. 14 CMOS RAM CS1. So that means that RAM isn't ever being selected. So that's not good for us. 15, getting some 16, 17, 18. So it's a bit strange to me that the CMOS RAM CS1 signal is not toggling from that PAL, but there's another one called RAM CS that is toggling. So we need to figure out which RAM is like the system RAM. This is a pretty normal Atari layout where you would have the processor, the program ROMs, and then the RAM right beside it. But they keep really mentioning that it's a CMOS type. And then if you look over here, we see that the power supply for this is V battery. It's not the normal power supply, it's the battery. There's no battery on this, and there is circuitry to, you know, when the game is on to not use the battery, so that's all okay. But this would lead me to believe that this is not actually the main system RAM. So let's go up. I actually realized that this set of schematics has a memory map. So we can see here that there's the bigger EEPROM program memory, the smaller EEPROM program memory, which is about half the size, and then the battery back RAM is next. But if you look way further down, the sound memory, which I think is actually the entire main program memory, is all the way down here at a different memory address. So let's find that on the board. Okay, down on the next page we can see it here. So the RAM is actually a pair of MB8148 at 7H and 8H. Okay, that's these little guys right up here. These are Fujitsu memory, and we know what we say when we see the F, we say F, Fujitsu. Let's check them out, see if they're getting all their signals though. 3, 4... They are getting enabled. They are both getting written to. Okay. Let's see if all their outputs, 12, 13, 14, those all have outputs on them. 12, 13, 14. Okay, so the chips themselves are getting all the signals they're supposed to, and data is coming in and out. Of course, it could be bad data. Let's try piggybacking. I have one here that's actually a 2148. I'm not sure if that's close enough. Let's try piggybacking there. Is there any change? Let's reset. No. Try this one. No. My next move would normally be to desolder this RAM, socket it, test it, and then put in replacements. But a local collector recently gave me a Fluke 9010A to play around with, which is a microprocessor tester. And it's basically a unit that allows you to interrogate certain parts of the board. It actually acts as the CPU, so you can send custom commands. And one of the things that it should be able to do is let me test the RAM without desoldering it. So let's get that set up and see if it can help us out. So I haven't featured this on the channel before, and I probably won't feature it too often in the future because it's a rare and expensive tool, and I don't expect everybody who's watching this video to be able to get one. And I really only want to feature tools on this channel that the average person could reasonably attain. Let's take a look at the Fluke. Okay, let's turn it on. Power up, okay. So this is actually a 9005A, not a 9010A, which you would normally see. So as far as I understand it, it was like a stripped down version, and some people have done the work to bring this up to the standard of that machine. So that's a custom keyboard. This one has a USB serial upgrade, so you can run programs from your computer. I will put links down below for the mods that have been done to this in case you want to have that done to yours as well. So I will be using the Z80 pod today. This is also a custom unit. Again, the Z80 pods would be kind of hard to find in the wild, so someone has taken the time to reproduce them. I do have a 6502 as well. So with the Z80 connected, and I have the ribbon cable back into the SIF socket here that's part of the pod, I can hit auto. And there you go, pod self-test, Z80 OK. So now I'm ready to connect this ribbon cable, this connector, to the board. I'm gonna use my IC extractor for that. Now I need to insert this, but I need to have pin 1 over here. So I need to do a little bit of, can't really see it here, but I have a red light on the pod, so that means that it's not receiving a clock signal through here, but the board's not on yet. So let's turn on the board, see if we get that. Okay, that's changed to green, so that's good. So first test we'll do is the bus test to see if the address and data lines can be driven how they're supposed to be. Active force line. So that indicates that something is being forced, I guess, on the Z80 that it doesn't expect. Seems to be at different addresses. So it, what would that be? Oh, you know what? That's actually probably the reset pin. So I have read that you're supposed to disable the Watchdog on a board like this. So let's disable the Watchdog the same way we did before. So we're gonna jump pins 1 and pin 8. That should disable the Watchdog. Good. Turn the board back on. All right, let's try bus again. Bus test, okay. All right, okay, this thing is working. So before we get right into the RAM test, let's test the 2 ROMs that are on board, since we know that they are working, but we don't know if the board can read them correctly. So in this case, we'll hit ROM. And where do we read from? Back on the schematics, we can actually see the memory map here. So we're gonna be looking at this right here, which is from 0 to 1 FFF. Okay, so that's from 0 to 1 FFF. Okay. Now it needs a signature. Signature is really the same thing as a checksum, but Fluke has its own way of doing it, so we have to look it up in a database or figure out the algorithm and calculate it ourselves. But there is a good website for this. Here we have the Arcade Repair DB. Just discovered this. I don't know how long it's been going on for, but I think it came out of Arcade Restoration. Let's check pole position. Okay, so I'm in the Atari version 1 version manufactured by Namco. And if I go down here to the main CPU, so this one here, 136014.105. This matches the CRC32. I can't see the whole thing, but trust me, it does. So this is our Fluke signature that we came here for, 7B84. 7B84, enter. Take a little bit of time. All right, we got an okay. Let's try the second one. So our second one is from 2000 to 2FFF. ROM 2000 to 2FFF. Yes. And our signature this time, I'll go back, look at the page. Signature this time will be 7B7B. Enter. All right, we got an okay. So that result is very interesting to me because if you remember, when we were testing before, that second ROM was never being selected before the Watchdog kicked in. So I think the program was failing somewhere in the contents of that first ROM, never even got to the second ROM, but the board can read it. So that lends more credence to the idea that this game is just crashing. All right, so as I said before, this RAM right here, they keep calling the CMOS RAM, and I think it's just for like high scores, which is usually battery backed, but there's no battery here. But I think the actual main system RAM are these two right here. But let's read this one. Let's read that CMOS RAM. So back on the schematic here, they call that the battery backup RAM. So that's from 3000 to 37FF. So RAM short, that is the short RAM test from 3000 up to 37FF. All right, that's okay as well. And once again, that was a area that we didn't see being selected when we were testing before the Watchdog kicked in. Chalk one more up for this game is just crashing too early. So now it's time to test the actual system RAM, which I think has the greatest chance of being our problem here. So that they're calling the sound memory, and that's from 8000 to 83FF. The RAM short, we're gonna do 8000 to 83FF. Oh, got a beat. All right, error at 83E0 bits FF. It's asking if I want to loop it again. So let's run it again. Kind of hard to see, but this last one here is alternating between F and E. I'm not sure if that is saying it's sometimes returning FF, sometimes returning FE. Apparently, you have to kind of decode this stuff anyway. We're not going to get into that right now. But basically, so this address is not working. So let's try one more thing here. I'm going to go to a random address like 8200. So I'm going to do write at address 8200, which is within that bad RAM. I think it's that bad RAM. And I'm going to put in like, let's say 6A, just whatever. Okay, it says it was okay, it wrote it. Now if I read 8200, 6A. So that section is okay wherever that was. Now that number 83E0 is like right near the top. It's right near the top, awfully close to 83FF. I guess that doesn't really matter if it really can't read it. Let's try writing the last address manually. So write at 83FF. And I'm gonna write in there 89, just whatever. Okay, now let's read it. Same address, 83FF, 89. Okay, so like that's fine. So I'm finding this a bit strange. It seems like it's actually just a few bytes that aren't working, but I mean, that would probably be enough to crash the game. There's no note on the board that would say there should be anything else in there that wouldn't be normally read-writable. Like that block is really just for that. So I have to say I'm a little bit skeptical of the RAM being bad because the two little RAMs are actually 4 bits apiece. And for example, when I wrote in FF and I got back 23, neither of those came back as F, so it makes it seem like both RAM would be bad at the same time. But that's the best I have to go on right now, so let's desolder one of the RAMs and test it, and we'll go on to the second one if we have to. So I have my Neo lock tester with the SRAM blade, and 8148 should be equivalent to 2148. Test, bad, bad. And it's weird because it's like randomly bad. Like sometimes it'll say like 16 good and 1 bad. It's very weird. And I tried 2114, which is the same pinout. I think it's supposed to be slower, but that one even goes through the whole thing and then says bad. So I'm gonna socket this one and try it with another chip and see if that works. I'm gonna try a 2114 in here, which I think should be fine. This is a new one, so I'm guessing it will be fast enough. Okay, turn it back on. Bus test is okay. All right, so we're gonna repeat our RAM test now. So we're gonna do RAM short and 8000 to 83FF. 83FF. See if we get the same error or if we get an okay. Nope, same error. Okay, this time I got 0F. And as I said, this number here, you're supposed to expand it and it will tell you which ones basically are good and bad, I think. 0 and F might mean that one of the chips is working now while the other one is still bad. Let's try that test I was doing before. So the byte that's broken, 83E0. If I write FF to that, then I read it. I got F7, so I wrote an F to the first nibble, which is 4 bits, and it stuck, and the second one did not. So that really says to me the first chip is now fixed, and the second chip is still broken, so I guess let's take it out. Okay, let's put that one in. Okay, let's do our RAM test. RAM short, 8000 to 83FF. Okay, all right, we passed the test. Okay, let's see if we've accomplished anything by switching out that RAM. Maybe not. So no real change here. Still watchdogging. I checked and it's still not accessing the second ROM. It's still not accessing the CMOS RAM, and it's still not turning on those Z8002 CPUs. So I wonder if we can use the MAME debugger to actually figure out the order in which the different sections are being tested at the beginning, to see where we're getting stuck. All right, try and stay with me here. So I have watch points set up for all of the different sections of RAM that are on the board. So for example, 3000 over there should be backup battery RAM over here, as an example. And I also have the two extra CPU enables. So A004, which is down here, CPU 1 enable, and then A005. So I'm gonna step into the program and see when each of those sections actually gets written to for the first time. Okay, so all those are set up as breakpoints, so when I start the emulation, then it should stop when it gets to them. So press F5 to start. All right, so immediately it stops at A004 and it says data equals 0. So it's going to turn off that CPU 1, presumably followed by A005, CPU 2. All right, so that makes sense. We haven't seen those enable yet, those CPU 1 and 2. They are off, which is what we're seeing on the board. Okay, next it goes to 8000, which is our main system RAM, so that makes sense to me. More writing to 8000. It might do a lot at 8000, so I'm going to skip that one. We know it checks the main system RAM, so let's turn that one off. All right, okay, next it goes to 4000, so that's interesting. 4000, if you recall, is right here in the memory map, motion object memory. So it's actually checking RAM on the video board right after the system RAM, and it has not tried to enable the CPUs or anything. So, okay, let's turn that one off now. 4000. Okay, next it goes to 4400, so next it goes to the motion object memory for this other stuff. Okay, let's turn that off. Then it turns on that first CPU. Should do the second one after that, I presume. Oh no, it does a bunch of tests. Then it turns on the second one. Okay, so it must test the memory for that first CPU before going on to the second one. Okay, then it goes to 4800, which is road memory. Then 4C, which is alphanumeric memory. Let's turn off 4C so we don't get... Oh, that's when it gets written to the screen. Then it goes to the CPU again, so it must actually make sure that the other two CPUs are turned on. Yes, it is. And then the program should start. All right, that actually was very interesting. So we saw that it actually checks the memory on the video board before it continues on and even tries to turn on the extra CPUs. So if our video board is not responding to that RAM, then it's not going to start. So let's hook up the Fluke again and test the rest of that memory. Interestingly, in that whole thing, it never touched that CMOS RAM that I think is used for the high scores. Didn't even check it. All right, so now we're going to check the first section that it went to after the system RAM, which was 4000 up to 43FF. 43FF. Nope. Okay, we got an error right away. Yep, doesn't like that. All right, let's find this RAM on the video board and see what kind of signals it's getting. I'm on the video board schematic now, and these will be the 4 RAMs we'll be looking at, 7C up to 8B. It looks like AB 1 up to 11 are coming in directly, but I assume there's another one of these 245s further back. But these upper address pins all come in through this 245, and the data comes in and out through another 245. These are common to fail, so I wouldn't be surprised if one of these two is causing all of our trouble. So if I read 4000, okay, I got a number CE, and if I repeat it, okay, that's different. That's BC, BC. CE. It's going back and forth between two values, but it never changes from those two values. So I did a bit of reading and I found at least one forum post where somebody mentioned that they were having similar problems to this, and it came down to the type of RAM that was in the board, and different, say, manufacturers of RAM would actually have different results. So some were always reliable to be read by the Fluke, some were not. I'm going to hope that's an indication that that is the bad RAM. So I'm going to take those out and test them right now. Okay, so replacing that RAM didn't help. I'm really convinced that the video board is okay. So I'm gonna go back to the CPU board. I'm gonna check all the signals that are supposed to be coming from the CPU board, either over to the video board or back, and make sure that they all appear to be at least sending data. Okay guys, well, I am stumped on this board. I just can't get it to boot. All the signals look good. Pretty much everything I look at looks like it should be fine, and coupled with the Fluke reading fine most of the time makes me think this is something that's going to be just crazy if I figure it out. So my next idea is, because the data bus has so many chips on it, I'm wondering if maybe just one of the buffers that enables, say, a section of RAM or something is not accurately moving over the data between them, and maybe that's why I'm getting these flaky results. So I'm just gonna piggyback a few of the buffer chips and see if I get any changes at all. All right, so going all the way back to the CPU board on the Z80, we've got 3 buffer chips here, 5J, 4J, and 3J. Okay, so that's these 3 here. So I got a 367. I'm just gonna piggyback and see if it changes anything on the screen. No, not really. No, don't think so. Oh. Oh, what was that? That looked like it was actually moving on in the test. Let's try that again. Oh, this could be it. No way. All the way to the title screen. Okay. It's working without this. Let me reset it here. No. RAM error. What the heck? It just needs a jump start with a good chip. And if I pull it off? Okay, no. So I get Alright, well, okay, well the game is running. Let's get that 367 out, replace it with a socket, and slap in this new one. Yeah. So I am quite interested to see if this actually shows as a non-working chip or not. IC test, 367, test. So it looks like pin 10 is an input, so when that was given a 1, pin 9 should have been high as well, but it's showing in red, indicating that is not what was received. Kind of a weird way to show it, but that seems to be the problem. Okay, I got another 367 here. Give that a test. All normal. Okay, let's give it a test. Looking better than it ever did before. All right, it's booting. In the test mode, we should be able to test the acceleration noise and the other sounds and music as well. So let's check that out. Now, if I turn this up, you hear this really nasty noise. You could probably barely hear it over the static, but the acceleration noise is actually in there. Alright, it's a few weeks later, and as I was editing the video, I found out that the last few hours of troubleshooting, the video got corrupted, but I still wanted to finish things up here. I spent a lot of time troubleshooting the audio circuits, and it really seemed like the engine noise was fine, and the speech was fine, and the problems were only in the other sound effects. Most of that was on this page here called Sound Buffers and Multiplexer, and I thoroughly tested everything and couldn't find any problems whatsoever. I tried searching through some other repair logs, and I finally found this message here from Charles Klein, who is a very well-known member on the Arcade Museum forums, and he did the exact same thing I did, which was to swap in some 2114 SRAM for the main system RAM, and what he figured out was 2114 SRAM does not work in the sound circuit. Nothing but scratchy static. So even though those MB8148s were testing bad on my Neolock tester, I decided to put them back in, and they passed the RAM test, and all the sounds were there, and even the Fluke could read and write them properly. The last thing I tested was the controls, and I ended up using a trackball for steering left and right because the type of signals that a standard HAP trackball produces will work with pole position. And on my little jam adapter, I just had a pot that I used for the accelerator. Just as a note, all the RAM tested fine with the Fluke after I fixed that 367. So I shipped everything back, and Dave received it and got it in his pole position, and over the next few days he got everything working. He sent me some videos, so let's check that out.
That's all she wrote.
I don't always get to see what happens to boards after I send them back out, so this was great to see it working. And that's all from me, and I'll see you next time.